I'm Peter Hall, a host at WNED Classical, a radio station where our founding music director was Peter Goldsmith, a beloved fellow in musical circles here in Western New York and Southern Ontario. Peter unfortunately passed away in the year 2010, but he is survived by his younger brother, Martin Goldsmith, who is also a radio guy and so much more, including an author and a great raconteur. Martin Goldsmith, welcome back to Buffalo, at least virtually.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's great to be with you.
And you're actually physically coming to Buffalo very soon for a special program Thursday night, February 10th, which will start at 6 o'clock at Kleinhans Music Hall. It's a multimedia presentation, and I'm not sure where to jump in other than to say that first off, it's a collaboration you've worked out with JoAnn Falletta and the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. So take it from there.
Well, thanks, Peter. Some years ago, I published a book called The Inextinguishable Symphony, a true story of music and love in Nazi Germany. It's about my parents and their experiences playing with an all-Jewish orchestra between 1935, when my mother joined, and 1941, when they managed to escape Germany, literally at the last minute. The book was around for a while, and then I got an email from a Danish filmmaker by the name of Anders Ostergaard asking me if he could use the book as the basis for a documentary film. I readily agreed, and we began work on the screenplay, the two of us. Anders works in what in the publishing world is known as narrative nonfiction, in that he uses actors to portray real characters and real events. And he scored quite the coup by casting as my father the great late Swiss actor Bruno Ganz, who died in February of 2019, shortly after completing work on the film, which is called Winter Journey. It stands as Bruno Ganz's very last film. Film goers will remember him as the angel in Wings of Desire, and very probably more famously, he portrayed Adolf Hitler in the film Downfall about a dozen years ago. So what is going to be happening on Thursday night, the 10th of February at Kleinhans, is a screening of the film, which will be followed by a Q&A session involving me and the Buffalo Philharmonic's beloved music director, JoAnn Falletta. And then Maestra Falletta will conduct the Buffalo Philharmonic in the Inextinguishable Symphony, the Symphony No. 4 by Danish composer Carl Nielsen, the piece that gave me the idea for the title of my book.
Now, I want to emphasize to our viewers and listeners, this is something quite special. I can certainly see, as part of a Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra concert, a full-length symphony with maybe a little Q&A from the stage, or maybe some activities over at the Mary Seton Room. We meet and greet, get our books signed, and go home. To combine these two together is something truly magnificent. To have a chance to meet you, see the movie, and hear the entire orchestra in one of the greatest symphonies ever composed is truly magnifique. How long did it take to sort of get this all formed? I gather from what I've heard that you and JoAnn it solidified pretty quickly.
What happened is that shortly after Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in January of 1933, the Nazis began evicting Jewish artists from their positions with German opera companies, theater companies, orchestras, so that by the late spring of 1933, there were literally hundreds of now unemployed Jewish artists, actors, dancers, singers, flutists, and they came together and formed this Kulturbund, this cultural association. It was only open to Jews to perform with the Kulturbund, to perform or to take tickets in the box office or to clean the lavatories, to do anything with the Kulturbund, you had to be Jewish, and only Jews were allowed to attend performances by the Kulturbund. So this was a very special organization made up of brave Jewish artists. And the story of the of the organization, and by extension, the film, it's just full of great music. A soundtrack for the film would be, I think, quite exciting. But since the film is so music heavy, it struck me as being a natural progression to have a live musical performance to follow the film. So I got that idea together, and I emailed JoAnn, and she pronounced herself overwhelmed by the idea and was very enthusiastic. And this was back in April of last year. But within just days, the Buffalo Phil management agreed to the idea. And so the date for far away, February 10th, was selected. And now, goodness, now we're just days away.
and here we are. I do want to remind our viewers and listeners that JoAnn Falletta loves to embrace some of these causes. She has recorded extensively the music of another Jewish musician, and that was the composer Marcel Tieberg, whose manuscripts made their way over to Buffalo, required extensive work to turn into a playable form. And so Buffalo audiences have, or I should say, will be familiar with Tieberg's story. And unfortunately, he perished at Auschwitz. Very fortunately, your parents escaped. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about growing up, as you did with your brother Peter, in Cleveland, and without grandparents. And when you asked about them, you didn't get any answers. Can you tell us that story?
Well, yes. When I was born in St. Louis, my mom was in the St. Louis Symphony for 21 years, and then we moved to Cleveland when she joined the Cleveland Orchestra. My brother and I noticed that, unlike our friends and neighbors, we could not go over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house at Thanksgiving. We had no grandmothers, no grandfathers, no aunts or uncles. And my brother once asked, how come? And my father replied shortly, they died in the war. And that was the extent of his explanation. It wasn't until, yes, the reality was a lot more grisly than that, a lot more tragic than that. But I didn't discover any of these details until much later, when I began doing the research into the Kulturbund and having the conversations with my father that are reenacted in the film Winter Journey. It wasn't until then that I got a greater sense of what had happened to my family.
So when you were growing up in Cleveland, your dad didn't want to talk about this, but at some point you persuaded him to open up, and that gave you the material that you needed for the book, The Inextinguishable Symphony, as well as for this the screenplay for the movie Winter Journey. How did that opening up take place?
Well, this was after he and my mom retired. They moved to Tucson, Arizona, and as my father was no longer working, I guess, under my, I hope, gentle questioning, he did open up and recalled a number of events relating both to the Kulturbund and just his growing up in Germany and his experiences in the 30s after the Nazis came to power, and his life and the life of all other German Jews became ever more perilous. But it's quite striking, the cinematography in the film Winter Journey, and it is something that appealed very much to the director, who, as I say, is from Denmark. The American Southwest is, a foreign country to people of European descent, and the sight of my father walking through Sabino Canyon in northeastern Tucson, Arizona, with the saguaro cactus plants and the deep blue Arizona sky is quite a contrast to the black and white footage of Nazi Germany that is also a part of the film.
Now, growing up, when you and your brother Peter Goldsmith were in high school, you both played instruments, and Peter took after your dad, Gunther, and picked up the flute. So, dish the dirt here, Martin. Was he good?
And, I have to confess, I'm not sure. I attended a couple of his band concerts, but when he was one of like 2 or 3 flutists, so it's hard to say. But he inherited my father's flute. My mom played the viola, my father played the flute, and they both were good enough that they got rather ringing endorsements from the conductor of the Berlin Kulturbund Orchestra, a man by the name of Rudolf Schwartz. Rudolf Schwartz was sent to one of the camps in 1941 when the Kulturbund was suddenly dissolved. He survived that ordeal, made his way to England. He conducted in Bournemouth for a number of years and then began teaching. And one of his prize pupils was a young man named Simon Rattle. And eventually Sir Simon Rattle became the music director of the Berlin Philharmonic. So it was interesting that the pupil of the conductor of the Jewish Kulturbund became the music director in Berlin. I should say that the Kulturbund existed for all that time because the Minister for Public Enlightenment and Propaganda, as he was known, Joseph Goebbels, saw the Kulturbund as a very useful propaganda tool when international outcry, such as it was, began to arise about the Germans' treatment of the Jews of Germany. Goebbels was able to say, but look, the Jews have their own orchestra, their own opera company. If we were really treating them that badly, would we afford them such an opportunity as that? All these rumors you're hearing are just that, rumors, pay no attention to them. So the Kulturbund operated between 1933 and 1941 with the express consent and in fact encouragement of the Kulturbund, though only Jews were allowed to attend. And the schedule of the Kulturbund was not discussed in mainstream German newspapers, only in the Jewish press. So, but it was, as I say, supported by the Nazi regime.
I would be interested in finding out, what happened to put an end to this? What was the defining moment, which I gather is a date that will resonate with many people today, September 11th, although in 1941,
yes.
All of a sudden it stopped. What happened?
By the autumn of 1941, the Germans had been conducting their propaganda, so to speak, on the battlefield for the past 2 years already. And they decided that the Kulturbund was of no further use to them. So quite literally from one day to the next, the Kulturbund was dissolved and everybody who had not managed to get out by then were sent to the camps. Luckily, very luckily, my parents managed to escape in late May and early June of 1941 with just 3 months to spare. They made their way to Lisbon, Portugal, and got on what apparently was the second to last boat leaving Europe with Jewish refugees. So they pulled up onto Ellis Island on June 22nd, 1941, just in time.
Have you visited Ellis Island to see the
I have, yes. It's very, very moving. I'm often, though I am a sentimental person, I am generally not necessarily moved by large public monuments, but I can never see the Statue of Liberty without tearing up a little bit. My father told me that on their, I think, nearly 2-week voyage from Lisbon to New York City, at the end of the voyage, they got up at 4 o'clock in the morning so that they could be among the first to see the Statue of Liberty when their ship, the Mugino, pulled into New York Harbor.
Great story. Thanks for sharing that. It's like, whew. So the program is titled after the film, Winter Journey. And once again, it's going to be at Kleinhans Music Hall in downtown Buffalo, Thursday night, a little earlier than one might expect for an evening concert. The events start at 6. The doors open at 5:30. People can get more information and tickets by going to the BPO website, bpo.org, or calling their box office at 716-885-5000. And it's your chance, everyone's chance, to see the film, hear a great symphony, and meet the author and raconteur who we're visiting with right now, Martin Goldsmith, who, once again, if you just joined us late, is the 3-year younger brother of Peter Goldsmith, the founding music director of WNED Classical here in Buffalo. Oh, and just one more quick question. So your dad played the flute, your mom played the viola, your older brother Peter also picked up the flute. And what instrument did you choose and why?
I chose to play the French horn when it came time for me to join the high school band. My parents said the French horn is sort of a difficult instrument. I guess I took that on as a challenge. And I played the horn for several years in high school and a couple of years thereafter.
So a man not afraid of challenges, including researching his parents and writing a book, working on a movie, which we can all see this Thursday night, as well as a wonderful career in radio. And we've heard your marvelous voice on NPR, on public television, for folks who have Sirius XM. It's always great to hear your voice, and it's great to see you actually, if only on Zoom, and this Thursday evening in person.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be in Buffalo, where, as you say, my brother lived and flourished for a number of years, and Thursday night should be quite a time. It's the first time that the film and a orchestral performance will be combined. I hope it's the first of many, but there can only be one premiere, and that will be in Buffalo, thanks to your pioneering music director, JoAnn Falletta.
Martin Goldsmith, Godspeed on your voyage here, and thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you, Peter. It's been a great pleasure.